All right, everyone. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's a Thursday night. We're striking up the live stream. It's about 9:30 Eastern time on a Thursday night. I have got so much work to do, so much content to provide you as we try to knock out the top 5 at every position across the country in all the major conferences and the top 10 nationally at every position, and do schedule rankings and do team rankings and predictions, and of course team reports that we do across the country. I've got so much work to do, so much content to provide, but I can't help striking up these live streams. So I could be working on all that. I could be knocking out the top 5 at the various positions across the country in the various conferences, or the top 10 nationally, as we did the quarterbacks. I hope you like that video. And a lot of other content we're going to bring you, but I just can't stay off of the live stream. So we are going to hopefully lock in and settle in on a regular schedule on the live streams, and we'll do that at some point. But never expect us to stop doing impromptu, off-the-cuff live streams. That will just be what we do. So we've got about 9 on the line right out of the gate. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So if you missed the first few seconds, basically I was letting you know that I could be producing content right now. I could be producing top 10 and top 5 lists like we've had in recent days. Top 5 in the ACC at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. The quarterback has yet to be released. I will be releasing that probably tomorrow. Top 5 quarterbacks in the ACC and the top 10 nationally at quarterback, and all the other videos that we provide and the content. But this is what I love to do more than anything, is strike up the live stream, talk to you, and get your requests, your suggestions, and of course the comments and the questions about college football. If you like the audio, it's probably not you because you're watching this, and whether you watch that on your laptop or your mobile phone, hopefully you're not watching while you're driving. Don't do that. You can just listen to it, or you can go to, if you want to work out, you're on the treadmill, or you do your errands, and you do your, let's say, your chores around the house, any type of deal that you're doing, or don't tell the boss that you want to listen to Mark Rogers TV at work. You go to Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher. Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, or Stitcher, and just search Mark Rogers TV, and you get the audio right now. We are currently on the drive for 5. That would be 5,000 subscribers. We just passed 4,700 just a few minutes ago. Just past 4,700. I caught that as I was striking up the live stream. Where I believe at 4,702. The drive for 5,000 subscribers. So please help us in that endeavor. The more subscribers we have, obviously, the more successful we are to a certain extent. That's one measurement. And I want to do this all the time, produce college football content for you. So that's going to take some doing. But as Alonzo1219, our buddy, says and did a few weeks ago, Mark, we'll get you to 1 million subscribers. If we can do that, let's first get to the 4 zeros, the one with the 4 zeros. 10,000 would be phenomenal by the end of the year. And then hopefully we can get to beyond that. But we're currently in the drive for 5,000 subscribers, past 4,700 just a few minutes ago. And speaking of, Alonzo1219, the generous and giving man that he is, and I mean that with all sincerity, this is phenomenal. When he announced this a couple weeks ago and said that, hey, Mark, I believe in you, believe in your channel, believe in what you're doing. And whoever subscribes to me, Alonzo1219 on YouTube, and also subscribes then to Mark Rogers TV and brings in the most, I was going to say subs, and I went subscribers, the most subscribers to Mark Rogers TV before July 15th. Whoever can do that, bring in the most subs to Mark Rogers TV by July 15th, get some swag from Alonzo1219. And I mean some swag. He's got some nice hats and T-shirts, the typical stuff, but he also has that turnover chain. And If you want to see what it looks like, just check out Alonso1219. But also, if you love college football and you're not a Miami fan, or for whatever reason you're a Canes fan, but you want something different, he's got other stuff to choose from. Some nice jewelry to choose from, some nice bling, not Miami related. Okay, we're going to talk some college football. Here we go. In recent days, we have had all Ohio State last night, all UCLA on Thursday night. So you guys can let me know if you enjoy those shows, which we bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers all the time, but we bring on 2 or 3 at a time, and we just absorb ourselves into Ohio State football last night for 80 minutes with Steve Hellwagon from 247 Sports and Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone and Claire Crawford. We talked to Ohio State for 80 minutes. We did it with UCLA last Thursday night for 75, 80, 90 minutes with Gojo Bruins, Mike Regalado, and Last Word on College Football's Tony Siracusa. So I'm guessing that you guys want to see LSU. We could do that with LSU. Just talk LSU football for like 60, 80, 90 minutes. Just absorb ourselves in the Bayou Bengals. Miami, of course. I'm sure that you would like that. USC, for some reason, have not been able to do much USC content in recent weeks. Unfortunately, we will jump on the Trojans and get that done for you. But again, all Ohio State, all UCLA, we would love to bring those shows to you as well, because I just think there's value to saying, hey, let's bring on 3 or 4 different minds on this particular team, this program, and really tear it up for a long period of time and talk college football and talk about that particular program. So again, if you haven't seen it, last night it was a fun discussion for 80 minutes talking Ohio State football. If you hate the Buckeyes, still watch it. It was fun college football talk. UCLA, again, last Thursday night, and we will continue to bring you those. All right, I've got live streams all over the place, so even check out the old live streams over the last week. I'm doing roughly 1 a day, so we've had all sorts of fun doing the live streams. And the thing I like about the live streams is that obviously the engagement, the involvement from you, hearing the comments and the questions, and if you give me a suggestion, I take it seriously, meaning I run after about 90% of them. Now, every so often, somebody brings up a suggestion like few days ago, somebody brought up, hey, do a mythical, hypothetical matchup of 2014 Ohio State against 2016 Clemson. NCIS Fanatic, of course, suggested that. Well, for me to do that justice, it would take a ton of research and thought, and that's more of an off-season thing. And now that we've hit basically July 1st, let's steamroll toward 2018. But great off-season content, and I love to do that kind of stuff, do historical stuff, and we'll continue to do that even more here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. But we're steamrolling toward 2018 with the SEC Media Days just about 2 weeks away. So we are going through this weekend. We're going into a weekend here. And then once it hits Monday, we'll be 2 weeks away from SEC Football Media Days. Crazy to believe it. So all the legacy kind of stuff, the historical context videos that you want me to do, I love doing them. But a few other suggestions I can't remember right now, just in the last few days, that I had to say, hey, that's a great topic. I love it. Top 25 programs of all time. We did that with Steve Dace a few weeks ago. Now, that was his top 25. I didn't necessarily agree, and I know many of you did not agree on Steve Dace Michigan podcast and his top 25 programs for the last 25 years. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up the video from about 2 weeks ago, top 25 programs. And the formula, he didn't just sit there and go, Alabama, then USC. And then he came up with a metric, and then he did the math, and he coughed up his top 25 programs for the last 25 years. And I would love to do that, and we'll do that at some point. But again, we're going toward 2018. So my bottom line point is, if you give me a suggestion or give me a guest that you would like to see, I go after it. Just here in the last few days, I looked at the last weeks of video, and we see Tennessee, Michigan, Oklahoma, Alabama, Arizona State, TCU, Nebraska, LSU, all provided for you looking toward 2018. And June is rivalry month here at Mark Rogers TV. We have looked at a number of the top rivalries in college football, and those have been fun discussions as well. All right, I'm going to look at the live stream real quick, and then I'm going to introduce two topics for tonight. Two topics for tonight involving who does more with less, and maybe even we can turn that around and say who does less with more, and then underrated players across college football, because ESPN.com has listed its most underrated player for each top 25 team. But first, we will strike up the live chat and see what you guys have on your minds. Meanwhile, I will not sing. I'm not going to do that. Here we go with the live chat. All right, who's on the line? Prince. Prince was quick tonight. Well done. Let me try to extend this. So I got a MacBook Pro. That's what I shoot this on currently until I get a new camera. I've got a MacBook Pro here, and then I got a MacBook Air, and it's a old one, and it doesn't like to do some things I like it to do, and I always have to keep it plugged in because it will die in a hurry. So those are the kind of things I'm talking about when I say need subscribers, need more money, get better equipment, all that sort of thing. But I'll try to read this anyway. Prince, the first like and the first comment. Nice job, Prince. Prince is doing a nice job for us, and I always appreciate the comments. And even when you guys disagree with me, I tell you that all the time. If you do it with some knowledge and have something to back up your point, love it. Country Boy on the line, as well as Cash Boy D. I'm not going to read, of course, everybody on the line. Thanks so much for jumping on board. All right. Best in the country, TCU from Zoom Play. Zoom Play, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. I don't believe I've seen you on the live stream before. Yes, I love the live streams too, Prince. I do. As I mentioned off the top, for anybody who wasn't watching right off the top, man, I got a list a mile long of content I want to provide you guys, but I got to do the live streams. I love the live streams. And just to see what you guys have. All right. Anything else? George is on the line as well. Happy birthday, George. I said just a second ago that maybe I would sing while I was waiting. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. The viewers are going down and down and down. They're leaving. Happy birthday, dear George. Happy birthday to you. Okay. All right. Hope you had a nice birthday. Thought you were going to do a special on why Florida wins a national title, but no, you were probably out skiing or something. Good guess, George. Not quite. You know what? It does remind me of a couple things I did promise, and I thought one of them was to you, and if you can remind me what it is, I'll write it down and I'll get to it. We did a video about a week ago. We did the top 10 non-conference games, and then I've done under the radar games, and I knocked out weeks 1, 2, 3, and I've knocked out 4, haven't released 4 yet. So weeks 1, 2, and 3 are out. And Navy Thomas 8 assumed that Nebraska, Colorado was going to be one of my under the radar games. And I said, whoops, should have included that. So I promised Navy Thomas 8 a special preview on the Nebraska-Colorado game. And I promised something else to someone. And George, I thought it was you, of something that you suggested that I actually thought was a really good idea. All right, Richard can't wait for Auburn and Washington. I knocked that out amongst the top 10 non-conference games. I believe it was number 3 on the list. Washington, Auburn. And I believe the Huskies are a little bit better right now, but I think it's a bigger game for Washington in the Pac-12 because they could be in a similar situation that they were last year, where the conference isn't going to be given a whole lot of credit if they can't win the big non-conference games, and the champion is not going to get the benefit of the doubt. If Auburn wins the SEC, they're in. There might actually be a second SEC team get in again if it's a loser of an SEC championship game, or if this happens again, I will go crazy if a non-division winner gets in. All right, country boy, yeah. Talking Canes. For anybody on here who loves Miami football, you could have joined us last night. Hopefully you did. For Brandon Holloway, Wholesome won his first appearance at Mark Rogers TV. We couldn't connect on the video. I had him on the phone. It was a great discussion. And of course, we took a ton of questions and comments on Miami. All right. Yeah, Ricky letting us know, not necessarily neutral with Auburn and Washington. And that's been a slight advantage for the SEC with most of these neutral matchups. So think about them in recent years. LSU, to its credit, did make the return trip to Wisconsin and Lambeau Field after the Badgers came south to Houston. Both games were extremely good games. Remember them well. LSU down to Melvin Gordon, who was just tearing them to shreds. 24-7 came back for the win. Gordon got knocked out, and so did Wisconsin's two defensive tackles, and LSU came back for the win. A couple years later, LSU going to Lambeau Field, Badgers pulled off the upset against the top 5 LSU team. That game was just on, I believe, the Big Ten networks just a few nights ago. I caught a few plays. Bull Gator likes LSU over Miami 31-12. Something tells me that he doesn't necessarily totally believe that. We got Big Va on the line, another handle that I haven't recognized from the past. So again, if you're coming across Mark Rogers TV for the first time, we knock out college football like nobody's business. More content from the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry, and myself, analysis from myself. And we talk college football, and we do it for the smart fan. That would be you. So I see some handles on here, and it might be some people that have watched me for a long time and just decided not to jump on the live stream or make any kind of comments. And that's fine. If you just watch the content and enjoy it, I appreciate it. Just make sure to comment and to like. It helps out the channel. And of course, what's crazy to me is that the metrics tell us that average video, I'm going to throw this guess out there, this question for everybody that, and I don't want to miss any comments that need some kind of response, but for an average video that I release, and I think my average video gets about 600 to 650 views. Out of those number of views, how many of those people do you think subscribe? Just on average. Okay. Won't be joining the choir anytime soon. All right. I did my best, NCI's fanatic. It's all about what's in here. What's in here? You know, could Bob Dylan really sing? That's the first name that came to mind of a great artist who can't sing. All right. Hope I don't miss anything here, because I like to respond to all the good stuff here. And obviously, a lot of this is you guys going back and forth. I'm not sure what Mark just said, but I trust him for 2 wins, the national title, because Mark said so. Okay. How good is Michigan State? It's interesting, Dondre, that you bring up Michigan State. We're going to talk a little Michigan State football during one of our topics here. So again, it's who does more with less, Michigan State, and also who does less with more, and looking at the players that maybe do a little bit less or do more with less. Less publicity. I don't think it's necessarily less talent when we look at what ESPN released as the most underrated player for each top 25 team. All right, Richard, letting us know that Michigan knocked out Florida 33-17. Man, that was a game that I was geared up for. I thought it was going to be a great game. Thought it was going to be a big matchup for that season. And neither team really played that well, and Michigan won it pretty easily despite 2 pick sixes from Wilton Spate. Auburn going to destroy Washington. Feel sorry for Washington. All right, Prince, Mark, I gave up years ago trying to predict the Big Ten, so it's the hardest conference to make predictions on. And I said the exact same thing, Prince. You may have remembered from a few weeks ago that I think that the ACC is the easiest. That's the way it looks right now. The easiest one to predict. It's going to be difficult for me to deviate from Clemson, Miami. The SEC, pretty much the same thing. Alabama, Georgia. So out of those 4 divisions, the 2 ACC divisions and the 2 SEC divisions with Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Miami, which one, if one was going to be upset this season in the division race and somebody else is going to make a championship game, who would that be? Would it be Auburn? Would it be Virginia Tech? Those are the first 2 teams that come to mind that I think have the best chance of knocking off said favorite. All right. The Bama. Is that what we've got there? Won't win the SEC. We're going to beat the hell out of them. Wait a minute. Oh, the barn. Oh, sorry, Crimson and White 17. And that's 17 national championships, right? We should talk about that. Talking about historical stuff that I can't get to right now. These national championships really need to be cleaned up. And it's just not Alabama. It's everyone claims the most ridiculous national championships with 2 losses when somebody else had none. And when they lost the bowl game. And we'd have to split many. So, man, that would be a great exercise right there. We strike up the live stream. We go year after year after year. And I look at the final top 25 poll or pre-1989. Do you guys remember this? Top 20 poll. The top 20 poll pre-1989. And we run it down and say, wait a minute. Why did they win that? Why are they claiming? These 3 teams are claiming the national championship. Why didn't this team claim it? They're number 7, but man, they went undefeated and beat all these really good teams. And unfortunately, what you're going to see in the history of college football is we're going to compare all these teams and they never played each other. A bunch of them didn't even play a top 20 team, especially back in ancient days. But we could reassign national championships. We could do it here at Mark Rogers TV. I'm not making my way through this chat very quickly. Brandon Holloway, rather share for Auburn. Washington should be scared. Trust me, Auburn is a bunch of giant players. Okay. Michigan can't score. That may change, country boy. May change this year with that Shea Patterson guy at quarterback. What's going on, Mark Rogers? Another Cane is in the house. Al Johnson. And Al had some really good things to hit us up with a few nights ago. First time I saw Al Johnson's name out there and had some good things to say. So welcome aboard, Mark Rogers TV. Oh, the Canes are dominating here. Donovan Robinson, though. Les really screwed us that game. You talk about a guy, and this is Les. L-E-S did L-E-S-S with more. That would be one of mine right there, Donovan. Speaking of the conversation that's upcoming with who did more with less or less with more. Who is Mark Rogers' guy that keeps talking while I'm trying to chat? What's the talking about anyway? Less is more. Auburn is the Giants. Boy, I gotta. You guys are all over the place. I refuse to recognize Ohio State because they're not going to win. Trust me. Did someone invent a time machine? All this Cane talk, I would think Bill Clinton was president. Noah on the line. Good to see you. Lamar Stevens making an appearance with Central Florida. Didn't care about Auburn's size. All right. Good stuff there. All right. Again, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, coming your way with the live stream on a Thursday night. And we're headed toward the first week of August and August camp. And before that, SEC football media days. And then the other conferences fall in line. And we'll start to hit it hard with coverage for 2018 there with Media Days. I will personally attend the American Conference Media Days and bring you some live reports from there. All right. Also, obviously, we've got much to get to here with top 5 rankings that we've already produced from the SEC at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, from the ACC with quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, and my top 10 at quarterbacks nationally. Check that out as well. And again, if you love the audio, and I'm probably talking to the wrong people because you're watching me right now, but if you find yourself running errands, running chores around the house, whatever you're doing, and the audio would be better for you, well, I can't guarantee that the audio is going to catch up to the video, meaning sometimes you'll see I release an audio podcast, which is exactly what you hear right here, but it's a few days later. So I give the priority to the video. And so basically you're going to see the same on the audio podcast as the video for the most part, just a day or two late. And that's going to be a problem once the season starts. So I'm going to have to catch it up. It has to be on time, of course. I think they'll have 400 yards passing every game. All right, so let's get to some topics because you guys are just messing around here. All right, what we have here is what caught my eye today is Michigan State signed its highest recruit ever. The number 7 player, not at his position, the 7th ranked player in the ESPN 300. Devontae Dobbs, offensive lineman. Devontae Dobbs, offensive lineman, ranked the best at his position, 7th rated player overall in the ESPN 300. He's out of Belleville, Michigan. He says he's going to Michigan State. And you can imagine when you're the 7th rated player in the country, regardless of position, he turned down all the big boys. Ohio State was in the running close, and Michigan. Actually, Michigan wasn't on his final list. He chooses Michigan State. Now, of course, this is a 2019 recruit. We are just about 6 months away from the first early signing period. We are just about 8 months away from the first week of February. So things can change. Of course, things can change and he can sign with somebody else. But he is committed to Michigan State. Highest Michigan State commit ever. Would break the record of the 42nd ranked player, William Golston. Remember him? He's currently with, I believe, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. William Golston, who was a 2010 recruit, 42nd in the nation in the top 300. And this would be Michigan State's best signee ever, statistically, according to the rankings. I would think Le'Veon Bell would rank a little bit higher than some of these other people at this point. But according to the recruiting rankings, and he's bringing with him the 69th rated player, regardless of position. Again, this is like a top 3 to 5 player at his position, a wide receiver. So it got me to thinking, Michigan State never gets guys like this. Never. You just heard it. Their best player of all time, according to the recruiting rankings coming out of high school, William Golston, was number 42. And they got to commit as the number 7 player, according to ESPN's 300, and 247, and Rivals are right there rating this kid highly as well. So who does more with less? 3 programs come to mind. I'll make it 4. You tell me who traditionally does more with less. What coach, what program develops players? Meaning, if you look at the recruiting rankings, they're always 50th or 60th or 70th. And they're churning out some really good teams that go to decent bowl games that finish in the top 25. Or they get top 30 classes, 35 classes, and they're competing for national championships. 4 come to mind. I see 3 right away. Coconut Cane, probably the most creative there with Navy. All right. So the Navy's a different deal, and it is a great point. What is done at the service academies is amazing. I've had a few discussions with Troy Calhoun, the Air Force head coach, right here at Mark Rogers TV. Just discussed his team with him this spring, and he's been on 3 or 4 times. And what they do at the service academies is insane to consider that these kids are not focused first and foremost on football. They are focused on very difficult studies and all the training that they have to do that's focused elsewhere, plus the size limitations. And they play in group of 5 conferences that are very competitive and play Power 5 schedules. Just look at who Air Force, Army, and Navy play on a regular basis. Shoot, last year, Army played Ohio State. Air Force regularly schedules the likes of Notre Dame and BYU and others in the Power 5. And they go to bowl games on a regular basis and play really good Power 5 teams. No, they're not playing in the New Year's Six, but they're playing close to top 25 teams in bowl games. Navy beat Pitt 2 years ago in a bowl game. They just beat Virginia, and that may not seem like a big deal, but consider Virginia had 3 NFL players on its defense, at least 3 that I can think of. 3 NFL players on the defense and a quarterback who's in an NFL camp right now or will be in a few weeks. A couple running backs, wide receivers who were ranked highly coming out of high school and will be playing in the NFL. And Navy just annihilated them, 42-7? So the call about Navy, again, whoever made that, Coconut Cane, that's a great one. What the service academies do is astounding. For them to even compete at this level, let alone most of the time go 8-4, 7-5, and go to decent bowl games, insane. Okay, Donovan chimes in with Wisconsin. Classic pick there. They were one of the 4 that I had on my mind. Dondre says Iowa. If you look at the players that Wisconsin brings in and the players Iowa brings in over the last 15 to 20 years, it's pretty much the same pool of players. Wisconsin's starting to up the ante and bring in a little bit better players. If you saw the wide receiver play at Wisconsin and to a lesser extent the secondary play at Wisconsin, it's getting better. I have said over and over and over and over on here, as we have seen Wisconsin compete as a top 15 program, what is the one thing that separates Ohio State and Alabama and Clemson and over the last 10 to 15 years, some of the best programs in college football? It was Florida and LSU, USC. And Wisconsin has been, they just don't scare anyone on the perimeter. They don't have the lockdown elite corners that go on to the NFL. They bring the front 7. And it's not an overly talented front 7, but man, they bring the front 7. A good secondary, but not an LSU, Florida, Ohio State, Michigan secondary. Wide receivers that are not that good. Jared Abbrederis was a good player. Tight ends, really good tight ends. Of course, the offensive line's massive. It's one of the best. And tailbacks. Quarterback play hasn't been elite at Wisconsin. Playmakers on offense have been underwhelming, and the secondary. That's where they have fallen behind and not been able to catch the elite. But this wide receiver core at Wisconsin this year is by far the best that we have seen, led by Danny Davis and company, A.J. Taylor and others. So the Wisconsin call, I think, is a better one than Iowa, Dondre. Iowa's pretty much winning 7 and 8 games every year. They did have the big season under Kirk Ferentz 2 years ago, 3 years ago, going to the Big Ten championship game. Then they were just wiped out in the Rose Bowl. And we ran down Kirk Ferentz's coaching record a few nights ago. And man, he had a huge start to his career, and that really built his reputation as a guy who could do more with less. He had 3 straight finishes in the top 10, beat LSU and Florida in bowl games when they were really good. Went to an Orange Bowl, went to another Orange Bowl in 2009, beat Georgia Tech, finished in the top 10, almost won a couple Big Ten championship games or championships before the Big Ten championship game. But then he's basically slid into this 8-4 mode most of the time. But we'll see what happens with Iowa. Duke comes to mind. Of course, we've got the academic situations at Stanford, Northwestern, and Duke in particular. Stanford, Northwestern, Duke, Vanderbilt. Those three come to mind. Those four come to mind as having the restrictions. Scott Houston chimes in with the Wildcats of Northwestern. Good call there. So you got the academy angle with Army, Navy and Air Force. You've got the academic standards at Stanford, Duke, Northwestern, and Vandy. So who stands out there? Obviously, it's Stanford. Stanford has been so much better than the other three. Northwestern, yeah, they've had a nice run here recently under Pat Fitzgerald. Duke went to an ACC championship game in 2013 when they got blasted by Jameis Winston and company. And Vanderbilt really hasn't done much of anything. They peaked under James Franklin, 9-4, 9-4. That's about the best we've gotten out of Vandy. That is by far the best we've gotten out of Vandy. They were winning at a higher clip than they had since like 1905. But Vandy is settled into this. They're going to win 5 or 6 games. Duke, a little bit better than that. But other than the season that they jumped out and went to the ACC title game, they lost to Arizona State in the Sun Bowl that year. Then the next season, they played really well. 2013. Actually, it was the 2013 season. They played Johnny Manziel in a really entertaining Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl and lost a game that they blew a 24-point lead. But Duke had a couple nice seasons. Now they've leveled off, and they're going to give us their 7 wins. Northwestern's been pretty much the same, but a little bit better than that, although Duke blasted Northwestern. And as we mentioned a few weeks ago, of course, that's one of our under-the-radar games this year, with Duke going back to Northwestern for the rematch. And these teams have played like 5 consecutive years. Vandy, not so much. So Stanford has been the one academic school out of those 4 that's been by far the best. They finished in the top 5 in the nation a number of times. They've won Rose Bowls. They have won BCS games. They've been really good. They really haven't had a down year. The worst they've done is 8-5. That was a few years ago when they won a Foster Farms Bowl against Maryland. That's been their bottom since 2009, 2010. Was it 2010, the year that they broke out under Harbaugh? And, of course, the season before is a 41-point underdog, beat USC. Then the next year they had Andrew Luck, and they went to the BCS game against Oklahoma State. And then they started their run of Rose Bowl games and other really big bowl games. And Stanford has been a legitimate top 10 to 15 program ever since. So out of the military academies, Army's making a late run here in the last few years, 10-3 last year, but Navy's basically been the best. Air Force used to be the best, I would say, from the early 80s to just several years ago, maybe 5 to 10 years ago. Air Force was the best academy. Navy took over, and now Army's jumping into the equation. For this academic glut of Northwestern, Duke, Vandy, Stanford, Stanford's the class by far. Northwestern's done a decent job as of late, but that's difficult as well. They can't run after everybody like the schools that they compete against in those conferences. Now we've got another group, and I've got 3 other schools in mind that do more with less. And NCIS Fanatic 21 has picked off one, and I see another one. Of course, Dondre, we addressed Wisconsin. And we got Lamar coming in. Yeah, LSU, Texas, USC, and Michigan for less with more. Yeah, right now, that's been it. So LSU stepped off the field at the Superdome against Alabama 21-0 in the BCS championship game in 2011. And we thought, man, that was a crappy performance, and this might be the most talented team in the nation. But they'll be back next year. That was 2011. We are coming up on 2018. So from 2011 to 2017, it's been a ton of 9-4s and 8-5s at LSU with loads of NFL talent, second to no one. Now, I don't mean that if we lined up all the NFL players for every program that LSU would definitely be number 1, but it would be indistinguishable between Ohio State and Florida State and Alabama and Clemson and LSU and a few others. They have produced as much talent. Maybe not this team coming up this year or last year's team, but Les Miles blew it. He blew it with awful player development, especially at quarterback, and lack of game management. I used to get on here before you guys watched years ago when Les Miles was on the sideline, and about 3 times a year I would say, "What are you doing?" and would break down the final 4 minutes of a game to point out all the miscues in terms of time management and ball control and play calling that blew games. Absolutely, Lamar. LSU, since 2011, stepping off the field in the BCS championship game, has underperformed, probably based compared to the talent they have than anybody in the country. Texas, for a brand name for one of the Blue Bloods, has definitely underachieved even more than the other teams that you've mentioned. They had a winning season last year. They went crazy because they went 7-6 and won a bowl game. That was their first winning season, I believe, in 5 years. Check me on that. It was even something for Texas to go to a bowl game a few years ago against Brett Bielema in Arkansas and get pasted 31-6 and finish 6-7. That was an accomplishment for Charlie Strong. So Texas, the last time they meant anything, talk about stepping off the field after a national championship, it was unfortunately after Colt McCoy had to sit on the sideline with a bum shoulder after getting knocked out at the Rose Bowl against Alabama in 2009. Garrett Gilbert played well. They threatened Alabama a few times, made it a 24-21 game. Bama was too strong in the fourth quarter, the final 5 or 6 minutes, 37-21. Texas, you still thought Mac Brown, Texas, they're rolling. Look at this team. Look at this roster. They just won a national championship in 2005, and they've been really good, and they just took Alabama to the fourth quarter and finished number 2. It's Texas. They'll keep going. There was no thought that Texas, this is the end for them. It was almost like relating this to the NFL and the catch. Dwight Clark just passed away a few weeks ago, unfortunately. Of course, that was sad, what happened to him, and mostly related to football. But of course, Dwight Clark made one of the historic plays in the history of the NFL, the catch, in the 1981 NFC Championship game. Now, it's a bit overstated and overblown that ended the Dallas Cowboys dynasty. And I won't completely go into that, but the Cowboys played in the next NFC Championship game and went to the playoffs through 85, 4 years later. But it makes for a good narrative. And in terms of greatness, elite play, yes, that was the Dallas Cowboys and Tom Landry walking off the field as what was considered to be the NFL franchise and the best team that just lost to the upstart San Francisco 49ers. And little did we know, we would really not hear from the Cowboys again. That version of the Cowboys under the great Tom Landry. Of course, Jimmy Johnson took over later when Jerry Jones bought the team, and that's a different era. The same thing with LSU walking off the field in 2011, though not quite as dramatic and not quite the narrative and story with the mythic legend of the Dallas Cowboys and Tom Landry. But LSU 2011, everybody thought, man, they looked awful in this game, but they'll be back next year. And ever since, it's been 4 and 5 losses every year. Texas 2009, Colt McCoy. Man, it's a shame. Would have loved to have seen their quarterback, who's one of the best in the nation, take on the Alabama defense, but we didn't get to see that. And bam, the Alabama dynasty takes off, and Texas never heard of from again. And we have yet to hear from Texas. Now, last year, good signs that Texas is back. I believe Tom Herman is the guy, and I expect them to compete for a Big 12 championship. Look at the signs last year. They do lose a ton on defense, but the recruiting classes and the talent is there in that conference. If they were in the SEC, I would say no way, but in that conference to compete for a championship. So Lamar's got a good run of teams here. USC, the last time they really stepped off the field as an elite program I'm going to discount the Rose Bowl win from 2 years ago. It was a nice win over a good Penn State team, but they were really good. They were one of the 5 to 10 best teams, but that was kind of everything came together for that team. Ronald Jones, Deontay Burnett, finding Sam Darnold after 3 games, and they went on a nice run, and they finished up the season, and it would have been interesting to see them in the playoff in 2016. But I mean, sustained excellence, dominance, an elite program. That was Pete Carroll. That was USC. That was a season before the Texas narrative in the Rose Bowl, where USC finished off Penn State. So a Big Ten champion Penn State that was really good, top 5 good, goes to the Rose Bowl, and USC makes them look like rubbish. The final, you'll see on Wikipedia, says 38-24, but the game wasn't that close. That's how dominant USC was from 02 to 08. Wow. They could have, with a few more breaks, a few more plays, just 1 or 2 here or there, they could have really owned between 02 and 06. They let 05 slip away against Vince Young, of course. They let 08 slip away. They didn't have a chance to play in the national championship game. Maybe they should have been there instead of Oklahoma versus Florida. That would have been a great game. USC, Florida in the title game that year. But that's another good call from Lamar, because basically, USC's been good for the most part since 08, but we haven't heard from them, and they haven't been in the discussion as an elite team since 08. They've had a couple nice seasons, but the Matt Barkley year, before they were ranked number 1 to start the season and bottomed out and fell on their faces at 7-6, they had a really good team that year. And then I believe that was 2012. And 2 years ago in 16, they had a really good team. But sustained excellence, Pete Carroll took it with him. And Michigan. When was the last time Michigan was elite? You could say when Ohio State and Troy Smith beat the number 2 ranked Wolverines at the conclusion of 06, that was the last glimpse of Michigan being elite. I don't really think that team was elite. So Michigan kind of took a slow decline from 97 when they won the national championship, and they were really good in 98. They won the Citrus Bowl. 99, they won the Orange Bowl over Alabama, Sean Alexander, Tom Brady. They had really good teams, 2000, 2001, 02. They went to good bowl games. They finished in the top 10, but elite, probably 97. Good call, Lamar. I like what you went with there. If you're talking about expecting the very, very best elite, that was the end of all those dynasties. LSU, 2011 BCS title game against Bama. Ever since. Texas, 09 Rose Bowl against Alabama. Ever since. USC, 08, they win the Rose Bowl. Ever since. Yes, they've had glimpses. They've been good. But I mean elite and considered, wow, they're a standard. And Michigan, it's been a long, long time. Mark, please look into bringing James Yoder from Chat Sports onto your show. He breaks news on Michigan football weeks before the news is officially released. That comes from Machine Unit. Welcome back, Machine Unit. Let's get that on the books. James Yoder. We'll look him up. Glenn Mason, Big Ten Network, told me the other day that he would come on, but I haven't heard back from him. So we'll stay after Glenn Mason, personal favorite of NCIS Fanatic 21. We got to shorten that name. You're just NCIS from now on. James Yoder, Chat Sports. Lamar, I gave you a lot of pub and a lot of airtime there, but that was a good list. That's the list. That is the list of the elite, no more. Now, you could throw in somebody else like Purdue, but they're on a different list. They're before last season, of course, they came back and they won 7 games and won a bowl game, and we'll see if that continues. But Purdue's on a different list. Purdue's we used to be in the top 25 a lot, not all the time, not a mainstay, but we used to be 8-4 good. Drew Brees, Kyle Orton, Curtis Painter, and then we just slid into the abyss. We were Kansas bad. So that's a different list. That's not elite to top 25 good or top 40 good. That's from like we're top 25 good and then we're awful. We're a joke. That's the Purdue list. Purdue. Who else has done that? Maryland. Maryland used to be 8-4, 9-3 good, and then they just exploded, imploded. You can go either way on that. And awful. Navy competing with teams like Notre Dame and winning. Yeah, Coconut Cane. Exactly. It's impressive. Clemson never had a top. Oh, man, I hate when this jumps around and it's gone. Coconut Cane wants Uncle Luke on the show. I believe it's Lou. Uncle Lou on the show. We've traded some emails, but I can't find the time. He can't find the time. Derek Stingley Jr., the next Patrick Peterson. Who's got the best defense in 2018? Dondre, you asked that question because you know you want to hear me say Clemson. And I would say Clemson, and I will say Clemson has the best defense. Who's that corner you guys have? I can't think of his name. Then you got Kendall Joseph at linebacker and that front four on defense. That's just... Oh, Michigan's really good on the front four. Ohio State and Alabama. But man... And I guess Auburn's still going to be that good, probably along the defensive front. But that Clemson line, whew, Christian Wilkins and Austin Bryant coming off the edge, Dexter Lawrence. Harbaugh's 10-3, 10-3, 8-5. He needs to be at least 10-3 again this year, or he's in trouble. Ricky. So he's had one subpar season. So he comes out of the gate taking over a 5-7 team that didn't have a 5-7 roster. Their defense was lights out, really good, just needed some direction and a pulse on offense. And Harbaugh gave them a 10-3, 10-3. And then we're expecting that to take off, and he hits us with an 8-5. And so suddenly it's gone from the signs look good, the signs look good. Wow, they came within inches of beating Ohio State, would have been in the college football playoff. And if this doesn't turn around for Harbaugh and Michigan, that's going to be the game that is going to go down in history as being the turning point. So I'm not nailing the nails in the coffin quite yet by any stretch because I think Michigan's really good. But if Harbaugh can never get over the hump and get it done in Ann Arbor, 2016 in Columbus, overtime game against Ohio State, that was the turning point, the fork in the road. Coming off 10-3, 10-3, and they finished 10-3 that year. But if they beat the Buckeyes in that game, and they were this close, and many believe that they were that close, they should have been given the fourth down conversion or the fourth down stop against JT Barrett. They're in the Big Ten championship game. They're playing Wisconsin. That's not a give me. Wisconsin was good. They were Cotton Bowl good. They were really good, but Michigan's better. They probably would have beaten Wisconsin just like Penn State did. And they're in the college football playoff. Now, even if they get wiped out like Ohio State did against Clemson, and they probably would have, I'm not thinking 31-0, but they would have lost to Clemson most likely. But still, a Big Ten championship, beat Ohio State, got to the college football playoff. I don't know what would have happened last season, but it wouldn't have been 8-5. Mark and his friends want to make... This jumps on me. Kills me. Just lost where I was. Mark and his friends want to make a list, but we don't care if we just want to talk about our team. George is giving it to me tonight. He's just let me know that you guys don't care what I have to say. Right. Coconut Cane, Kansas, bad. That's awful. Might as well not have a football team. Coconut Cane, look it up. Look up Purdue over the last 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years. Yeah. They've had some seasons, not all those seasons, some seasons. Florida used to be elite under Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. So the Florida scenario, much like the Texas and LSU scenario, seems to be you can mark one game, one turning point, one coaching situation changing. Pete Carroll gone, USC gone. Urban Meyer gone, Florida gone. Alabama fans are going to tell you that Urban Meyer wouldn't have competed with Bama over the last 10 years. We can argue that all night. We have no idea. I know, and this can't be debated, that Florida would have been a hell of a lot better over the last 10 years than they would have been with Will Muschamp and Jim McElwain. All right. That 06 Michigan team was elite level. They should have had a rematch for the national championship. Machine Unit, you get a good point. You can make that argument based on the track record for the season. Michigan was really good. They lost a game that a personal foul call, Michigan fans would tell you, extended an Ohio State drive that kept the ball out of their hands. They lost 42-39. They would have played in the national championship game against Florida or played a rematch against Ohio State. But if Michigan wins on the road against Ohio State, the Buckeyes probably don't maintain a 1 or 2 ranking to get to the national championship game. The thing that hurts the argument there is then Michigan went to the Rose Bowl and lost by 2 touchdowns to USC. All right. Julio Jones versus Patrick Peterson. You guys would have to battle that out and really dig up the reality of what happened between those two players. They played a few times. I don't know who got the best between those two. Coaching, recruiting, and development goes a long way. Samuel Brown, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. Michigan has the best defense, best 2 corners, and man coverage stats. Look it up. David Long has the best stats for a cornerback in the last decade. Mark, the Gators will not embarrass you. Bet on us. Lamar Stevens, actually, Auburn hires LSU and Mississippi State to take out Bama. USC might have a down year unless JT Daniels starts. I would think that JT Daniels is going to start by game 3 or 4. USC has to go on the road the final 2 days of September, the final 2 weeks of September, and play Texas and Stanford. Stanford, then Texas. They better have a quarterback in place by then. The SEC is such a something game. Weak Florida, weak LSU, weak Georgia, weak Texas makes a ridiculous Bama. If Michigan still doesn't do anything this year, Jim needs to be fired. I don't agree with that, unless they go 2-10. Ohio State should disband the football team and give it to women's volleyball or something. We hate the uniform. Nobody cares. How good is Oklahoma State this year? So they got the Hawaii transfer at quarterback, Drew Brown. He's thrown 37 touchdowns the last 2 years. He's most likely going to win a 4-man battle at quarterback. They lose James Washington, the most prolific player that they had going downfield, making big plays. Dondre, I haven't really looked at Oklahoma State much. We haven't talked Oklahoma State. They're not getting preseason top 25 love from the major services. People are thinking that Oklahoma's Oklahoma. They'll be fine, but probably a notch down, and it's going to be a wide open race with West Virginia taking its shot, Texas. Those are the 2 teams that are talked about most in challenging Oklahoma. But we will have to dig into Oklahoma State, and it'll probably get like 39 views, but I wrote it down. Maybe I need to do that. Talk some Oklahoma State football and give you a preview of what we've got with the Cowboys. But based on what I remember reading, four-man battle at quarterback. Spencer Sanders is the stud recruit, but he's probably not going to start this year. He's a dual threat top 10 player at quarterback. We interviewed him here at Mark Rogers TV, but also Drew Brown, the one guy with experience coming in from Hawaii, of course, playing inferior competition to what he's going to play in the Big 12, 37 touchdowns, 15 picks the last 2 years. Lose James Washington, Justice Hill, one of the best running backs in the country, one of the most dynamic, explosive players. I think USC is going 7-5 this year. I love Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's number one at all times. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Nebraska would have at least 2 more and see if Osborne had stayed as the head coach. The alpha male. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Not seeing you on here. Oklahoma State beat Iowa State, so they're cool with me. Coconut Cane, don't bring it up. Not here. Come on. And Machine Unit, I think a lot of fans of other teams are sleeping on Michigan this year because they just don't know of all the offseason hires and changes that were made by Harbaugh. Machine Unit, think that, believe that. You might be right. I tend to think it as well, but don't try to sell it to anyone until the Sunday after the trip to South Bend. If you come out of South Bend with a W, if it's pretty, if it's ugly, if it's dominant, if it's lucky, whatever it is, you come out of that game and you're a winner. You're 1-0. Then talk it up and preach Michigan football. Preach that Michigan's back and Jim Harbaugh is making the breakthrough. Until then, I tend to agree. I think that the roster is really good. And if they had a different schedule, I would be on board with Michigan being a major player this year. But Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, and is anybody else on that schedule really scary? But man, that's 5 games that could mean 2-3 in those 5 games, and suddenly you're 9-3. And nobody really cares. Mark, give me a warning before you end the show because I want to stay later, Gator. Oh, you want to say later, Gator. My eyes are tricking me tonight. I'll be preaching when LSU beats Miami. Alpha Male looking forward to Nebraska, Michigan. Been a while since we had a good Nebraska-Michigan game. When they first joined the Big Ten, Nebraska, Michigan, Denard Robinson and company, they played some pretty decent games, and it's been awful since. Obviously, they don't play every year. Penn State, Michigan State, and Wisconsin are games we can lose, but they don't scare me. Oh, I get you. They don't scare you. They're not better talent-wise. They're not better than you, but they've been winning those games, and Michigan's been losing those games. So those are the games you need to win. Out of the 5, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, and then the 3 biggies in the East. Of course, Notre Dame's a non-conference game. So actually, that's the game, the first game you would want to lose if you're going to choose a game, because you want to win the Big Ten championship, and that's first and foremost. But Harbaugh and company and you, Machine Unit, are going to have to answer a lot of questions and take a beating if you come out of the gate and lose to Notre Dame. But that's the game that if you're going to lose a game or 2, that's where you start, the non-conference game. But it has to be the first game. Therefore, that's going to either set you in motion toward a big season or not necessarily a big season, most people think. Northwestern better not win the West. They don't have the fans. Nobody would show up in Indianapolis. I have a lot of respect for Northwestern, whoever they are. Go Northwestern. With some of these team names, did you guys grow up watching college football, loving college football, but not knowing your geography very well or the placement of these universities? I don't know when I found out that Notre Dame was in Indiana or Northwestern was in Chicago or Evanston, Illinois, or where Duke was. Of course, I knew where Penn State was or Alabama or Georgia, but some of these schools, when I was growing up, I didn't know exactly where they were. We didn't have the internet. All right, folks. Going back to the original topic, and I think we hit it pretty well, so we're not going to drive it into the ground. Who does more with less? Who does less with more? More with less? I think we covered it, except for the Purple Wizard, Bill Snyder. Do a little homework and look up Bill Snyder's record, top to bottom at Kansas State. His wins, his losses, his bowl games, his top 10 finishes, top 25 finishes. Match that up against the recruiting rankings for those seasons. They just don't make sense. Bill Snyder at Kansas State. Underrated players. Maybe we save that for another night. Underrated players. ESPN.com released their most underrated player for each top 25 program. Somebody wants me to talk Oklahoma State football, or at least Dondre brought up Oklahoma State and whether they'll challenge in the Big 12. And I don't have a good read on Oklahoma State. I just know, again, that the major services, the major platforms, the big boys, see it as a down year for the Pokes. And somebody wants to hear from James Yoder from Chat Sports on Michigan football. That was Machine Unit. I don't like the name Bill Snyder. I like the name Mark Rogers. And I will not go into that any further. All right, guys, we will save it on the underrated players. I am going to get back to life, back to other stuff going on here at the Rogers household. And besides that, top 10 at every position, top 5 in every conference at every position, schedule rankings, predictions, team rankings, 130 all the way up to number 1. That's what I will try to deliver as we head toward Media Day. Fun talking to you as well, guys. We appreciate it. And Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's my final plug. See you, Panther Pro 22. Didn't hear from you tonight, but glad to see you on the chat. If you missed anything, obviously it's going to post in just a few minutes. You can go back to the beginning and hear my rant off the top and the rest of the live stream. I will be back at some time tomorrow. I will let you know, send out the notification beforehand and not necessarily do an impromptu, although I may add an impromptu as well. But I will send out the notification when I know I'm going live tomorrow. Otherwise, college football fans, we are one day closer to your favorite game, your favorite team on the field in week 1. Northwestern, Purdue on that Thursday night. Don't sleep on that game. And then we slide right into the big weekend, Notre Dame, Michigan, LSU, Miami, and more. All right. We will see you soon. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, signing off. You guys are the best. We will see you soon.